Track Talk returning with another commentated game of 1846, this time featuring Irwin and Count von Blucher. Both these players have been, I believe, on the channel before, and I think MJ Mill as well. And we will see how they do. I know that Irwin's a strong player, and Count von Blucher plays all the time, so I expect some pretty high-level game. Irwin with the choice of several good privates here, Steamboat, Chicago, and Western, and we'll see what he decides to take. Flipowitz, is it Flipowitz? Filipowitz um, has the Michigan Southern, private that I usually like, and the Big Four, otherwise not so great. Count has the O and I, Boomtown, Chicago, and Western, maybe looking towards the Chicago and Western. MJ Mill, both of the minor companies in Mail, and we'll see what the players have chosen. So Irwin took Steamboat and now has the option of the Ohio and Indiana or the Big Four. Could also take Boomtown, or maybe just looking to pass and hope that some of these more expensive privates get taken by other players. Filipowitz, he probably is not taking a mail contract and mostly has passes, but maybe looks towards the Big Four. Little Miami could be helpful as well with that. Filipowitz is, oh, sorry, now we're on Count von Blucher, and he has a lot of passes. So most of these privates are being taken. People are not picking up the passes, probably taking Big Four or a pass. And looks like MJ Mill will round us out, and we can say that Count did take a pass there. So MJ Mill, will he follow suit? Um, Looks like he did also take a pass. So neither of these players are eager to start the Big Four. Ohio and Indiana Steamboat for Irwin, probably passing. And Filipowitz has Little Miami and Boomtown, probably also going to be passing. And it looks like he does. So Count von Blucher going to be forced to start the Big Four probably. And now MJ Mill has the first option, first right of refusal on the mail contract. And Irwin also passing. Does Filipowitz pass here? Could take it. Count von Blucher has spent a fair amount, and he will probably be taking the mail contract for 50, but actually passing. So MJ Mill has a very cheap mail contract now. He's probably happy to take that. Amazing. So he actually passes. I think that if I'm MJ Mill, I would have taken that mail contract. Someone has to take it, obviously, and it's getting very cheap. So Irwin ends up with it. Why did MJ Mill pass there? Does he lose out on a par that he wanted by doing that? It was only $40. He would have had 220. Could still have parred for 70 and bought 3 shares. I guess maybe he wanted a par above 70. Anyway, he has first choice of companies, has the Michigan Southern. Nice synergy with the GT, but we'll see. Maybe looking towards a better company than the GT in the long term. And he will take the NYC, pars it at 80. So again, maybe that's why he made that decision to pass on the mail, so that he could par at 80. Count von Blucher, he is taking the IC, and he also pars at 80. Filipowitz has a bunch of cash. Unfortunately, 2 of the really good companies have been taken. He has Little Miami and Boomtown, maybe looking towards the B&O or C&O, and takes the B&O. Irwin going to be left with some rough choices here. Could par the PRR below the NYC and hope to race it towards Cleveland. Not unreasonable to do that. Alternatively, could take the Grand Trunk. Doesn't seem to have the best companies for that, but none of these companies are super appealing, I wouldn't say. And he does take the PRR. He actually floats it over the NYC, so that means it's going to be operating after the NYC in the first operating round. So the NYC should be able to get into Cleveland first, and if it's not green, PRR is going to have a hard time competing with that. So interesting decision there. MJ Mill probably buying his own share. He does. Count von Blucher going to buy another IC. Filipowitz can actually buy a bunch more shares in the B&O. And Irwin probably just buying his PRR. So let's see how much of the B&O Filipowitz is trying to buy here. He actually buys an IC and 1 more share in the B&O. So is he going to try and take a strategy where he closes the B&O? I don't think so. He didn't par it quite low enough. Usually, if they do that, they're going to be starting at 40. So just going to be running a low par B&O. And everybody will be passing. This should mean that Irwin maintains priority. Steamboat is going to be assigned and gets set to the PRR. And it also goes to Toledo. Okay. Michigan Southern's first operation, MJ Mill is running the NYC, so probably not going to be helping the GT, and he runs down into Toledo. Big Four, this is cooperating with the IC and is going to lay down towards Centralia. We have been seeing a lot of the Big Four companies laying towards Chicago, so there's a little bit of a difference there. Does let the IC link up with the Terre Haute and Indianapolis track on its first operation if it wants to. B&O, curious to see what this player is going for. Has privates that I don't really like very much, and didn't par for very high, so is going to have trouble with cash throughout the game. He takes the reserve token, and he assigns Boomtown. I assume that's to Cincinnati. I don't have the hexes turned on. Yes. And then we'll also upgrade Cincinnati. So he's going to be benefiting from the track laid by the Big Four as well, it looks like. And maybe actually competing instead of being friendly. So going to look to block it out of Louisville. That does hurt the IC, at least for the early game. He has bought 1-2 train and will just stay there for now. NYC probably laying south into Cleveland, hoping to get the jump on the PRR. And looks like he's setting himself up for the loop. Who ended up with the Chicago and Western? That was the IC player. Not the best synergy there, just because the IC doesn't usually have trouble getting a token in Chicago, so I don't know that that's really that high yield. But maybe that's why we saw him laying the Terre Haute track south instead of up to Chicago, because he already knows he can get there. So usually, if you're going to be trying to run Cleveland with the NYC, you'll buy 3-2 trains here, but maybe needs to be a little bit cautious. Probably not eager to open up to green for the PRR player. And he just buys 2. So he's not going to be running from Erie to Buffalo. The IC first operation, he is buying in his private, so actually just going to teleport straight away to Chicago. And is he just looking to kill all these token spots for the other players? He's setting up for the Mickey Mouse, so he's going to kill at least one of the token slots and probably hoping to head quickly east into Toledo and take advantage of a quick east-west run. He buys his private, gets the token on Indianapolis, maybe doing some of this because he's been blocked by the B&O player, at least temporarily, into getting into St. Louis, or Louisville. He buys 2-2 trains, so he just buys 1. He has 1 from the private company. And now we will see the PRR operate. He's not in green, so he's going to be forced to lay some expensive track east. And I don't think he has the Ohio and Indiana. He does. Okay, so he at least won't be blocked by those tiles into green. He can teleport into Fort Wayne, and he's going to link up to Toledo. So some competition for that tile compared to the IC being able to just zip right in there. I think that 1846 is fun in the sense that all these privates have, pretty meaningful impact on the game compared to a game like 1830 where it's really just for the buy-in that you worry about them. So I think it's fun to see, companies zipping all over the map and teleporting places. He should be able to access green here if he wants, and does. So he will be running 3 trains and running pretty well early in the game. The Michigan Southern, last minor company in the game, he will upgrade Toledo, probably just looking to cooperate with the NYC. NYC not really in danger of getting tokened out of Toledo. Probably we'll see the PRR get there, um, but the IC is going to be left high and dry, it looks like. He does drop a token in Toledo, and will he upgrade Cleveland? He just passes. And runs for 200, enough for a double jump. He's going to buy in his other private. And does have the option of laying those tracks to help the PRR in the future, but the fact that he teleported to Fort Wayne means that he may not be too interested in Homewood. NYC probably upgrades Cleveland and then lays a second run into it. Instead, going to buy in his private, so it doesn't actually need to upgrade Cleveland just yet. Um, and tokens in Toledo, so it has really good runs for his 2 trains. Is he running just... Oh, he can't run the third 2 train because he has the Michigan Southern. So I see now why he only bought 2. Ick. This player is the one that kind of lost out on the teleports. So he's going to upgrade Chicago and then potentially look to get into Detroit and bypass Toledo. He's running his 2 trains and paying out, just a single jump for him. And he buys a green train as well. B&O's second operation, probably looking to get into Louisville, does, and he's issuing for a green train, it looks like. Only has 1 train, so not going to be running too well, but it is sufficient because of his low par for a double jump. Oh, he actually only half pays. So he buys a green train. I worry a little bit about this Bino player's long-term prospects. He only has 2 treasury shares, and they're only worth $60 a piece. He has 5 shares, which is the lead compared to everyone else. But I think that his long-term potential is very limited as a result of his low par. PRR, on the other hand, looking quite good. So is the NYC. And Irwin has a lot of cash as a result of his private buy-ins. He buys one of his own shares from the market. MJ Mill also going to be buying his own share, but this time from the Treasury, so not even trying to defend his company. Looks like Count von Blucher is happy to deplete the Treasury as well. And Flipwitz, buying probably his only share here, buys a PRR. And he actually buys it from the market, helping Irwin out. So we'll see if Irwin buys his last market share. He does. Probably hoping that nobody buys and sells. He'd like to just not fall back here. But you may see someone like MJ Mill do that to try and get a little bit of a leg up in operating order. Everyone's passing. Oh, I spoke too soon. Count von Blucher sells the NYC, puts that on the market, probably hoping that the IC will operate first. And why is that? I guess he's hoping to get down into Detroit here. But isn't he mostly competing against the PRR for that, not really the NYC? So a little bit unclear. And what does he look to buy now that he's sold out? He's going to buy a PRR, probably the better paying share, and only has money for a B&O. If he buys a treasury share here, the B&O is going to be really in a rough spot. So he sells the PRR, it will be falling back, and will buy his own IC. And does buy a treasury of the B&O. So just a little bit of turn order manipulation from Count von Blucher, but he will sacrifice priority to do it. That said, you're giving priority to Filipowitz, who is kind of in a rough spot, so maybe you're not too worried about it. PRR first operate, does he... Maybe he upgrades D10? Not clear. He buys his private first of all, and then he upgrades Cleveland. Where is he going to leave a token? So I guess he's not leaving any tokens anywhere for now. Not too worried about Detroit. I guess he's basically secured a run through Erie and Cleveland, so not too focused on Detroit. And he's going to run for 330, very good. And does he full pay? He pays out. Doesn't have enough money for a second green train, probably just happy to maintain the status quo. Imagine Ick is going to be rushing over to Detroit here and probably leaving a token, which he does. So the GT is kind of a dead letter in this game, it seems like. And he is also running quite well. Actually, he's only running for about 180, so that's not that good at all. Um, NYC has 3 trains. Does he look to start opening up Chicago? Looks like it. And he has 3 trains now, so we'll be running pretty well. And he pays that out. Does double jump. He bought a green train, so I think there's one left. Yes. And B&O looks like he's going to be looking to get into Indianapolis, probably heading to Chicago, the south token there, and runs 2 trains for 240. He half pays and has money for the last green train as a result. PRR second operation, running 3 trains. Only one of them green though, but I don't imagine we'll see the brown trains come out before he has an opportunity to operate again, so not in a huge amount of danger. And he upgrades, will be getting into Chicago, but not able to run through Chicago. And he still is holding on to his tokens. Issues shares. I see. Does he bring out the brown train by himself? Looks like he's posturing for it, but is going to be just a little bit short. So not going to be able to rust these other players 2 trains before they run, I don't think. Oh, I see. Well, he can, but he will have to half pay to do it. That's painful. So it hurts him, but it hurts the other players a lot too, because he's going to get 1 extra run of the 2 trains compared to them. Ick is upgrading Detroit, expensive tile lay, and he issues as well, so going to be looking to probably half pay and then buy his own permanent train, which he does, and he can afford the more expensive 5 train if he wants it. He doesn't really need it. Can run the east-west route from Windsor to Chicago connections with the 4-6, and that's what he buys. So he's secured himself a late game run. It's the worst east-west run basically, but at least he is secure and can work on finding a second permanent train later in the game. NYC has 3 trains that are going to be rusting as a result of the brown trains coming out. He's going to upgrade and work on getting into Chicago through Toledo and bypass Detroit, it looks like. And also heading down south, maybe hoping to get a second late game east-west run through the south into St. Louis, but it's going to take a lot of work to get there. The other players have plenty of opportunity to mess with this with tokens and bad track. He actually redeems a share, and he might have to full withhold if he wants a permanent train here. Looks like he half pays. He is able to double jump, and he will buy a permanent train next round when people buy his treasury shares probably. Bino only has 1-2 trains, so hurt not significantly by them rusting. And he's going to get into St. Louis and also look towards Chicago. Someone is going to have to leap on this Chicago South token. I don't know if B&O is setting himself up with track to do that. It looks like upgrading E7 is going to be kind of difficult. PRR player may be looking to upgrade that to get down to Chicago South too. So I think the B&O is going to be left high and dry. And he pays out in full. So looking at the game state, Philip Witz is in second place. Irwin is in first. Philip Witz has a small share lead, but again, his B&O is pretty rough. Not a lot of cash, not a lot of potential for permanent trains, so in a dangerous position. The NYC and PRR, on the other hand, have quite good track, and the IC track is okay, and he has a permanent train, so looking much healthier. Philip Witz He is going to buy an IC, and he buys it from the market. Irwin also buying the market share of the IC. MJ Mill changing the pace and buying a treasury share from a different company. And it looks like Count is selling. So is he looking to float a company here? Instead, just buying his own IC. NYC getting sold. And the IC is very close to selling out and floating up as a result. MJ Mill helping with some market shares of the B&O, but this company is in really dire straits. IC is now sold out. May see someone sell a share into the market now that Count Van Blucher is fully invested. He's not able to defend his company any longer. And the B&O's last treasury share is sold. Irwin buying a market share. The rest of the players don't really have cash anymore. So unless they're trying to change priority or change operating order, not much interesting for them to do. Looks like MJ Mill will be taking priority in the next set of stock rounds. IC, where is he going to be heading? So maybe looking to upgrade E7 in order to get a run from Chicago down into Cincinnati and then eventually up through Erie. But again, much like the NYC, this southern route is fraught with danger. So instead, just going to upgrade to Chicago. That does leave the PRR the ability to upgrade E7 and get into the Chicago token. He's going to run for 500. Does he full pay this? He half pays. This is putting him pretty close to a second permanent train. I don't know if he wants to buy another one of the cheap ones. May want to just kind of half pay again and look towards one of the better expensive permanent trains. But he does indeed buy a second cheap permanent train. So he's going to be running pretty well, at least in the short term. PRR, he is heading towards Chicago and manages to make that connection. Doesn't have token money, actually. So could be in danger there. But fortunately for him, every company but the B&O has tokened in Chicago. In theory, the B&O should be able to upgrade E7 into Brown and drop a token there. Does he have cash for that? He does. So that would be a fear. I don't think the B&O is a very relevant company in this game, but it does hurt the PRR a lot to lose that token. He full withholds, so he's going to buy the last cheap permanent train. Are we going to be looking at a bankruptcy here? So the PRR bought the last permanent train, and now the B&O is sitting with two non-permanent trains, very little cash, and not an easy way to get it without withholding. That's really bad for him. NYC is in a similar position, but he has at least shares he can issue, that kind of thing. So he's going to upgrade Detroit, and he's running for 250 and pays it out. B&O, probably going to be seeing some withholding from this company, but it looks like he's going to secure that token in the Chicago. So bad news for the PRR player. He just missed out on that. He runs his two trains, is running pretty well, but is, again, as we kind of alluded to multiple times, probably going to need to at least half pay, if not full withhold, which he does. Going to have to do that again if he wants a permanent train. IC running 3 trains, 2 of them permanent, and upgrading Cincinnati. Does not have 2 east-west runs, but does have 1, so going to be running pretty well for 670. He could honestly half pay again, and he would still double jump and be on his way to a better permanent train. Instead, he full pays. NYC, he's going to upgrade Fort Wayne and get a run, a second run into Chicago. Not going to be able to run just yet. We'll have to do some more upgrades to secure that, but giving himself the potential in the future. Does he withhold again? He pays out. So again, someone's going to have to bring out these gray trains, but it doesn't look like the NYC is eager to be that guy. PRR tokening in Detroit, so that is full up. That only really hurts the B&O, and I'm not sure how much it hurts the B&O. It's going to prevent it from taking a cheap east-west run, but did it even have the train to do that? Had a 3.5, so it could have made that run. Um, so that will hurt it, at least in the short term, but I think he's going to be withholding for a permanent train probably. PRR buying some of his own shares back, and then looking to get down into St. Louis in the late game probably. He's running for 620, has a permanent train, and he pays it out. B&O will be interesting to see if he withholds again. Going to drop a token in Indianapolis, so just making sure he doesn't get blocked out there. And he has been tokened out of his east-west run, so his run is suffering to the tune of $70. But he still can withhold, I believe. No, he's going to be just short. He'll be $10 short. That's pretty painful. So that token on Detroit was actually very consequential. It's going to delay the gray trains, and he only half pays. So Count von Blucher is number one in net worth, has a bunch of cash going into the stock round, is trailing the rest of the players in stock density, but the IC is running very well, and it's guaranteed to get another run of its 3 trains, because even if a company floats, it'll be operating first. So he is in a very strong position now. Probably will just be looking to buy other players' shares and just hope to run to the victory. MJ Mill buying a PRR. PRR is running pretty well, but does have a train that's going to be rusting. Count von Blucher, so instead of buying other player shares, he's going to be floating the CNO. CNO operating in the south is tokened out of Indianapolis, but can bypass that through Cleveland. Could also look to head up towards Cleveland. Yeah, not entirely sure where he's going to go, but does have some potential. Probably not going to be the most important revenue center, but we'll be able to ensure that the gray trains come out before some of these other companies have a chance to operate. So that's going to hurt the B&O quite a bit, probably. Philip Witz just buying the PRR, and Irwin buying the PRR as well. That company is sold out, and the IC is also sold out. I imagine we'll see both of these companies not being sold down and just being held. NYC now going. Count von Blucher probably continuing to float the Chesapeake, trying to fully capitalize it. Filipowitz is buying at B&O. Not too many shares left for these other players at this point. And MJ Mill is passing, doesn't have cash anymore. Count von Blucher buying the last CNO, it looks like. Filipowitz buying an NYC. And we'll see Irwin also buying NYC, so that company is also sold out. Doesn't look like there's going to be enough cash to sell out the B&O, but that company is, like we said, in dire straits. So he does buy a second share of the B&O, and it looks like MJ Mill will maintain priority. Ick, happy to run 3 trains again, and be curious to see which track he's laying. So he's going to be getting into the east through Erie, it looks like. And where is he going to leave his token? Needs to be a little bit careful. Not so much of the Z tiles, but at Erie or Dayton or Columbus could, in theory, be tokened out. Fortunately for him, he has the CNO, so doesn't have to worry about those tokens being harmful to him. And he's going to, it looks like, defer laying a token for now. The other players, PRR has a token, and the NYC has a token, so could see them collude to hurt the IC, the IC and the Columbus. But it's going to be, yeah, they could do it. They both have runs through Cleveland, so if they both tokened in Columbus or Dayton, that would hurt both of Count von Blucher's companies. And running for 670, probably just full paying here. Yep. NYC, just short of a permanent train, so probably be half paying would be my guess. Gonna upgrade Erie. Does he drop a token anywhere? He's gonna pass for now. And he runs for 250, not impressive. and does have pay and will bring out the grays. He buys the 6, um, does have the capability of running through Chicago from Erie with that 6 train, so didn't have to pay for the more expensive 7-8. He's also left himself token money, which is very convenient because I imagine he's going to be looking to mess with Cal von Blucher in some way in the near future. CNO's first operation is going to have to issue shares if it wants a train, probably heading right into Cincinnati. And does he drop a token anywhere? He drops it on Erie, so that's a little bit unfortunate for the PRR player, um, who I imagine was eventually hoping to run from Buffalo to St. Louis. Will be stuck with Windsor now. Um, Not the end of the world, but not probably what he was hoping to see. And he has money for the more expensive 7-8 train, which he picks up, and still has money for one more token. PRR, upgrading to bypass the Chicago and get into St. Louis in the future. And he unfortunately was not able to run his non-permanent train before the gray trains ran out or came out, so we'll only get one train run out of the 3-5. Running for 750, and does he just full pay? Looks like B&O, no permanent trains, is the last run of the 3-5s. So he's upgrading Cincinnati into gray, and he will have to full withhold here, I think, in order to secure himself a permanent train. He is able to buy the 7-8. Does he have a 7-8 run? Um, Not really, not currently, but he may be able to get one through wheeling. So may see some more withholds in his future in order to get the money for the track, unfortunately. Count von Blucher running his 3 trains yet again. Very happy that he ran so far ahead in stock price that he was able to avoid the gray trains. And he is laying potentially to bypass Indianapolis, which is interesting because he has a token in Indianapolis, so he's making that a little bit less worthwhile. 680, and he full pays. So that's just a double jump. NYC, last run of the 3-5, upgrading Toledo, and has one east-west run, which will get him 560, so pretty good. PRR, he's probably heading down to St. Louis, and he's running his 2 permanent trains for 550. Full pays that, and actually he's able to triple jump, so great for him. Count von Blucher, CNO probably going to be linking up with Centralia here. It does. So he should have an east-west run now. It is not secure. There are tokens that could be dropped, and the NYC does not have quite enough cash to do it. So unfortunately, he may not be motivated to drop any tokens. That's bad news for Irwin, who has the other token that would be needed. CNO running for 370 with just one train, pretty good. And the B&O now probably looking towards wheeling, but again, doesn't have the money to do it. So running from Louisville to Chicago for 350. Pretty good, but just missing out on that east-west bonus into the next stock round. So just looking at net worth, it's very close between Irwin and Count von Blucher. A little bit surprised. I think that's mostly because Count von Blucher started a company and missed out on a run in that set of operating rounds. He will have an advantage in terms of one more share on Irwin because he's the president of 2 companies. And Irwin, the PRR is going to be running for less than the IC, it looks like. So it's going to be close. Hard for me to predict who's going to take this. I don't imagine any of these players are motivated to start the GT, so probably not a huge change in the game state. We'll just be seeing these players run their trains and paying out. $3,000 left in the bank. I think that this will be the last set of ORs, so people are just going to be massaging their portfolio here to make sure that they have the best paying shares. MJ Mill has his pick of the litter as he has priority. But unfortunately, there's not a whole lot left to buy. So probably looking towards the C&O, most stock appreciation and higher revenue. Instead buying the B&O, that's surprising. Um, Not entirely sure what motivates that. Cal von Blucher, happy probably to buy his own C&O shares. And he actually does float the GT, so I couldn't be more wrong in this operating round. I said that the C&O was going to be bought, and I said that the GT wouldn't float. I wonder why he's floating the GT here. I don't really see how it has any options in terms of track. So I guess eventually it would have to get down into Fort Wayne. There's no tokens that will block him because we've already established that the New York player doesn't have the money for it. So I don't know. I think this is probably a game-losing move here. C&O is going to be bought. Irwin also buying C&O. MJ Mill, C&O. Cal von Blucher presumably going to be continuing to float the GT. Looks like it. Irwin passing. Is he at his cert limit? So everybody's at their cert limit except for MJ Mill and Cal von Blucher. And the C&O is continuing to be bought. C&O will not be floating up unless Cal von Blucher buys that last share, which he does. And he can still buy, well, he doesn't have room in his cert limit, but he could have bought a GT. He has the money for it. So Philip Witz will have priority in the next stock round. Even with the float of the GT, I think we will still see the bank break. So I imagine that this is the final game state. And I think that starting the GT is going to prove to be a mistake. Maybe he can shuffle a, less valuable permanent train out of the ick and then give it a um, 7-8, but the 7-8 is only going to run, well, the 7-8 probably won't run at all, right? Because the IC operates before the GT. So the GT buys a train out of the IC and gives it the money. The next operating round, the IC buys the train, and then the game's over. So yeah, I think that this doesn't win him the game, and maybe the difference between him being able to catch up to Irwin, unfortunately. Count von Blucher, he did have a train that rusted, so probably not going to be running for the same 6 to 80, and maybe that's why he was motivated to start the GT. Maybe he saw that he was going to be losing either way. I see laying track for the GT and running his 2 trains, running for 550. So I think that $130 drop is probably what motivated him to do this. Maybe he didn't see any other way um, to have a chance, but definitely not ideal. So NYC, he is upgrading Cleveland, just improving his run a little bit, and running for 380. Irwin probably has all the track he really needs. Could look towards St. Louis. Not going to be able to reach it in this operating round. But it looks like that's maybe eventually where he's going. And he's going to pay out for 560. Count von Blucher running his second of 3 companies. And looks like he's also interested in getting into St. Louis. Running for 380 and paying out. GT now. Again, I think that he's heading towards Chicago and Fort Wayne, but he's not going to run this round. And I think the bank breaks here. So this was kind of a Hail Mary play. I see why he did it, but I don't think it's going to be enough to win him the game. Issues shares and starts heading towards that track that was laid for him by the IC, and he buys a 7-8. B&O, this company has been kind of underwhelming all game, and still just paying for 360. So let's just look at this for a second. Irwin has a $500 lead on Count von Blucher and ran for about $300 more as a result of the GT not running. And the bank has $2,000 left in it. So we should be seeing the bank break and Irwin taking the game. I see last run of the game. He's going to pay out for 550. PRR. Does he finally get into St. Louis here? He does. And still only has one east-west run, but is running for $50 more as a result. That helps Irwin. Irwin is already in the lead, so probably still going to be taking this game. NYC, upgrading Erie and does have access to St. Louis now if he chooses to take it. Instead, going to just be running to Chicago. It's probably the better run. C&O does have an east-west run through St. Louis for the first time. Actually, that's probably not for the first time. I think he had access through Centralia in the past, but laying important upgrade for the GT. So GT does have a 7-8, can run through Fort Wayne and down into Louisville. Um, I don't think that's going to be enough to change the game outcome, unfortunately. Too little, too late. First run of the GT, he tokens in Fort Wayne. That doesn't really change anything. And he will be running from Chicago to St. Louis, or Louisville. Running for 350. And the B&O's last company to operate. Looks like he was affected by that token in Fort Wayne. And that actually does hurt Irwin. This is a competition between Count von Blucher and Irwin, so hurting the GT, where your opponent is invested, does potentially make a difference. It cost him 20 bucks on this run. I don't imagine that's a difference in who wins. And actually, the bank did not break. Wow, $99. I did not see that coming. So actually, all the track lays and the token from the GT made the difference in extending the game. That's pretty incredible. So, in that light, Count von Blucher's decision to start the GT looks a lot better because now he has 2 shares on Irwin, um, and his companies are paying okay. So we'll see. That breathes some new life into the game. He's still running for less than Irwin, however. So unfortunately, I don't think that's going to change anything. There's really not any shares left to be bought here. People running the B&O may be looking towards the GT, but the difference there is pretty minimal, and it really only helps Irwin, um, not Count von Blucher, so that's not going to make a difference in the game either. Irwin's not even going to bother. Looks like MJ Mill will take the opportunity. That hurts a little bit because now the B&O will be falling back probably, and he's going to buy some shares of the GT. None of this really matters, unfortunately. So I think that I've said enough about this game. Um, Count von Blucher is, 600-ish behind Irwin, and I don't think that the revenue is going to be sufficient for him to come back in the game. So I think we can just skip to the end here. Um, there are tokens. I guess the X factor is tokens. So GT and C&O have tokens that could be dropped, and the PRR also has a token. If the GT were to token in, let's just look at the PRR's run for a second. So the PRR is running to Cincinnati, but not running through it. Um, so I suppose that if Count von Blucher wanted to double token in Dayton, that would hurt him a little bit. But again, really not going to be adequate to change the game, I don't think. Yeah, so I feel confident that we can just skip to the end of the game here. And this looks like none of those tokens were actually dropped, so they just kind of ran their trains. Irwin does take it. He wins by about $500. So Count von Blucher was running for just incrementally more than him at the end, but it wasn't enough to overcome his deficit. So a nice Hail Mary from Count von Blucher. I did not expect the GT par to be worth anything, but it did manage to extend the game and give him just a little more income. So it was a nice try, even if it ended up being not enough. Well played to all these players. Congrats to Irwin. And Track Talk will be back soon with more commentary.